Hello, and welcome to another exciting tutorial video. I'm going to teach you today about basic Pali-tanking, some of the core abilities, and when to use them. Um, so, further ado, let's get started. Jump right into it. Alright, so the first ability is going to be Consecration. Alright, so Consecration is going to be a go-to AoE ability that, due to the fact that I have it glyphed, is able to be targetable up to 25 yards, which means that you can throw it out on a group that is out of range and remain gaining aggro on them, or you can use it as a pull tool, essentially to gather some minor threat on a target, because then they're going to come running to you and run out of it, or you can use Consecration right underneath yourself. Because again, it's targetable. This will add extra AoE damage and cause more threat. The next ability is Avenger Shield. This is a miracle tool. This is your pull tool. This is essentially what you're going to use every pull, if possible. Throw it out there. Casters will be silenced, therefore they'll come running to you, casting spells, not doing spell damage, which is hard to. It's called mitigation. It's hard to resist a spell. It's a lot easier to resist melee damage. The next ability is Holy Wrath. This is an AoE that is short distance from yourself, but is good to gain aggro, or if you have mobs running in, we'll pick them up until you're able to go through your rotation and eventually get enough aggro to where you're holding everyone. This should be popped every single time it's up. And that will allow you essentially extra threat on targets. Next is Judgment. This is the same concept as Holy Wrath. However, this is single target and has a cooldown that is about the same. This should be used whenever readily available. Let's see here. Next ability is Shield of Righteousness. Alright, so this is really where it starts to play into effect. Why do you have these abilities? Well, your Holy Wrath and your Judgment, the reason you spam these, is because it's going to give you Holy Word Power. Holy Word Power can stack up to 5, and it requires 3, no more than 3, to use Shield of Righteousness. Shield of Righteousness is your active mitigation, which is the ability to block damage. Its reason it's called active is because you're actively using it, you're constantly using it. It will prevent damage from getting through to you, keeping you alive. Survivability. This will be used every single time you have 3 charges. The next ability is actually a macro ability that I have. It's Lay on Hands. Target myself, lay on hands, and then target the last target that I was attacking, so that my rotation is not messed up. This ability can allow you to go from 1% health to 100% health, essentially giving you an extra health bar. This is one of the best utilities a Paladin has. Its overall output is amazing. However, it requires a 5-minute cooldown, so therefore you can't not spam it. That being said, this is one of the best cooldowns in the game, in my personal opinion. Another macro that I have is Sacred Shield. Where do you get Sacred Shield from? Sacred Shield comes from your talents. At level 45, you gain this ability. Sacred Shield is an aura that you put on a target that will resist damage. Another active mitigation. Every 30 seconds you will have to recast this. However, you take less damage. Survivability is the whole purpose in being a tank. The same macro applies to Sacred Shield as it does to Lay on Hand. Target self, cast the ability of Sacred Hand, and then target last target. This allows you to continue your rotation without having to break targets. Or at least you don't have to click on something in order to be able to regain your target. The next ability that I have is Reckoning, and that is your taunt ability. It's a single taunt. It has a 8-second cooldown. This ability allows you to pick up one mob, one enemy that you're either losing threat on or you need to gain threat on. This is not something you use frequently unless you're losing threat. This is something that you would do if another mob you couldn't pick up threat on. It's used to be quite effective to taunt. Now, taunting has become something that is essentially an oh crap button or tank swapping. Some mechanics require you to swap tanks, especially in raids, and this will allow you to pull aggro off the other tank. Next is another macro that I use. Same principles. It's a Draenei only ability. It's called Gift of the Naru. Heals you for a percentage of your health. One of those go-to abilities that if you're low on health, this is useful. When I say low on health on this ability, I mean around 60%. It'll give you the ability to stay alive through some mechanics. If you're taking a lot of damage, this will also help prevent some of that or heal through some of that. The next ability is Guardian of Kings, 3-minute cooldown. So it's quite pricey, but it's definitely worth it. It blocks 50% of all incoming damage, and this lasts for 8 seconds. By doing this, if you're getting totally rocked, you can pop this ability and essentially save your healers some mana and save on your health bar. The next ability is Hammer of Righteousness. Hammer of Righteousness is a AoE ability that I suggest spamming this ability. One, because it gives you a holy power, which you need. And two, because it's an AoE thing. You're constantly doing damage to everything. It's probably the bread and butter to this whole thing. You would essentially go through your rotation with Hammer of Wrath, Judgment, and Holy Wrath, spamming those 3 abilities until you're able to pop your Shield of Righteousness. And it's just rinse and repeat from there. Re-keep your shield up if you're using this talent. Re-keep your shield up whenever available, every 30 seconds or so. And then Consecration is just for fun, extra damage, being able to hold AoE threat. And your Avenger Shield is your pull ability, as I described earlier. Run in, throw your shield. The beauty about Avenger Shield that I did not discuss yet is when you throw your shield, you have the capability of strafing, and if you strafe, the shield will actually deflect in that direction. And what I mean by this is if, let's say, these 3 flowers here, were all targets, you would throw your shield at this target here, strafe right as you threw it, and it would go right through all those targets, picking them all up. silencing casters, so they will have to come running to you, and stunning melee. It's also great if you're in the middle of a fight and you have a spellcaster who's off in the distance. You can throw your Avenger Shield at them, stopping them from casting spells. Great range ability. And lastly is another talent, Light's Hammer. Not really that useful. However, an extra AoE ability that throw it on the ground, fix a dent, and forget it. Oh, it didn't appear for some reason. But anyway, you throw it out, it does a lot of lightning bolts. Looks like Thor's hammer, essentially, and does AoE damage. So that pretty much covers that. I'm going to go into a dungeon and tank for you guys, show you how the rotation works. And so yeah, let's get started. If we can get into a queue. There we go. Oh yes, one thing before I forget. There is Righteous Fury. That if you do not have this on, you are not tanking. It increases your threat from every attack that you do. Make sure that is always on before you go into battle. Paladins have a significant lore within the World of Warcraft. Uther, who trained Arthas, is one of the many references to Paladins. Arthas obviously being the fallen Paladin, becoming the Lich King, and Beauvert, who I believe that's his name, actually took on the role of the Lich King after Arthas was defeated. Paladins have always played an important role in Warcraft. Seems that DPS does not want to click their queues. So we are not getting into a queue until they do. Come on, DPS. Come on, DPS. Yay. Yes, for not clicking the queue. This is somewhat frustrating from the older dungeons. Come on, DPS. Yep, still waiting on DPS. Alrighty, cool. So, here we go. Alright, so it should be noted that when you are doing a pull, you should always throw your Avenger Shield. You should then use Holy Wrath to gain some of the aggro, and just kind of toggle between Judgment and Shield of Righteousness whenever available. Whenever you see a shiny shield on your screen, that's an indication that you have a proc for Avenger Shield, and that should be used whenever readily available. Basically, rotation is, said earlier, Judgment, Holy Wrath, and Hammer of Righteousness. Throw your Avenger Shield whenever available. You want to try your best to keep most of these abilities on cooldown. Therefore, you know you're utilizing them to their best degrees. Make sure that you have every 30 seconds, or whenever you get a free button, make sure that you are recasting your Sacred Shield, which is 7. Just gonna quickly here. Don't know if that did anything, but alright. So, continuing on. Avenger Shield. Holy Wrath. What should be noted that Holy Wrath is able to stun for 3 seconds any undead and or demon. Quite useful in this dungeon especially. Free procs, pop it here just because. And then Holy Wrath. It's not up yet. Judgment. Holy Wrath. Avenger Shield. Hammer of Righteousness. Judgment. Holy Wrath. Avenger Shield. Consecration, because you're going to get a big pull here. Taunt that guy off in the corner with Reckoning, so that he'll come running to you. Talent, if you possibly choose to use it. Avenger Shield off in the distance. Recast Sacred Shield because it fell off. It's a terrible thing, by the way. If you're letting your Sacred Shield fall off, you're doing something terribly wrong. Shield of Righteousness. Avenger Shield. Holy Wrath. Judgment. Hammer of Righteousness. Shield of Righteousness. Judgment. Consecration, just because. Avenger Shield. Holy Wrath. Judgment. Rinse and repeat. She respawns, so just taunt her, pick her up, and then Judgment, Holy Wrath, and proceed on. If you're picking up a single target, it may be a good idea, instead of using Avenger Shield, to just use Judgment instead, since Judgment is more oriented towards single while Avenger's shield is 3 targets. And we're going to start off with Boss Pierce. Shield Righteousness for the damage mitigation, blockability. Then we're going to go Holy Wrath, Judgment, Shield of Righteousness, Vendor Shield, Consecration just because, Holy Wrath, and or Judgment, Shield of Righteousness, rebuff my shield, because again I let it fall off, which is terrible, don't do that. Then your Vendor Shield if you're capable of getting it off. These dungeons are a bit underpowered for the level of level 90 character, but especially with the new gear. But anyway, kind of get the general idea here. Consecration on the ground, free proc on the shield, Holy Wrath, free proc again. Make sure you use your free procs whenever available because you can't store them. If you get another proc, it will overlap your old one, and that essentially means that you're losing procs, which is a free cooldown. It's free AoE damage. Taunt that guy because he's attacking somebody else. He's not supposed to, but talking and playing kind of difficult for me. See how that lightning bolt hit that guy over there? This is an example of when a tank should just allow the DPS to be getting hit. Why? Because DPS isn't doing its job then. Their job is to make sure that they are hitting the same target that the tank is hitting, and no other targets. That is not on you, that is on them. Unless it is pulled by running by it, and then it is on you. If a DPS uses a lightning bolt, fireball, etc. on something that is totally out of the way, that's on them. They should be getting hit, and you should be allowing it. Why? So it can teach them the lesson of don't attack something that a tank shouldn't be attacking. This is something that most tanks do not do. They instead immediately rush over and pick it up because they feel that they are bad tanks. This is not the case. The actual case is they're bad DPS, and they want you to feel sorry for them. One of the mistakes that you probably just caught, if you are paying attention, is I turned my back to the boss. Probably shouldn't do that either. As a shield tank, you cannot block an ability or attack coming from behind you. So you should always try to face the mobs or enemies in the direction in front of you. That way, you're constantly blocking their attacks, or at least blocking some of their attacks. Not gonna be able to block them all. As a tank, try not to move things too much because you may have a rogue in your group, or a paladin, or some other melee class, which needs to physically hit things. If you're moving targets around, it's difficult for them to hit the target that you need them to hit, which means the target stays up longer, more mana from your healers having to heal you because the fight's longer, so on and so forth. If there's something on the ground, try to avoid it, try to stay out of it. Ground stuff is bad. I just pop Avenging Wrath there just because it was a bigger group, not necessarily needed, but it blocks the damage that you're taking. And we're almost at the end of the instance anyway, so damage mitigation becomes less and less. Unless you know, because I know that the boss isn't going to hit me that hard. Sorry to pop it. Most of the time you should probably save it for a boss that does hit hard. Or a big pull. Consecration on the ground there. Do extra damage. Make sure that you're always popping your Shield of Righteousness whenever it's up. This will essentially allow you to block some of the damage that you're taking. And that is that. There are other abilities. Obviously, if you go through the spell book and you start reading up on them, you'll notice that there is a ton of abilities Paladin has. Some of the things that I would recommend playing with are a cooldown, a Divine Shield, which is going to give you a 8-second 50% reduction to all damage that you incur. Do, but it's going to protect you 100%, sorry. It's essentially an 8-second invincibility that has a 2.5 minute cooldown. It's an extremely useful tanking ability. This is something that, again, put it on your bars, play around with it. Timing is everything for this ability, due to the fact that it takes so long to come off cooldown. You have 2 buffs that you are capable of doing. You have Blessing of the Kings, which is essentially like Mark of the Wild. It gives 5% stats. Or you have Blessing of Might, which gives a Mastery buff. Depending on what you have for class makeup in your group, this is something that you would talk to the group about, or would pick which one that you feel more comfortable or more valuable with. Usually it's Blessing of Might because it brings the uniqueness of giving Mastery to everyone, and Mastery is beneficial to a lot of classes, especially healers most of the time. Argent Defender, it's going to reduce, it's similar to Guardian, but it's a more buffed up version of Guardian over here. Guardian will protect you 50% of damage. Resist that, so if you're getting hit hard, it's a cooldown that you can use to avoid some of the damage. Whereas Argent Defender only does it 20%. However, if you were to die, you automatically come back with 12% health. So it's kind of a combination between it's a bogged down version of what would happen if you used Guardian and Lay on Hands. Kind of like go between. But if you had to pick the priority of what you would use for the 3, I would say that Guardians is the first survivability cooldown. If you know you're going to die, then lay on hands yourself. If you don't know you're going to die, or you don't think your healers are capable of bringing you back up, then I would go with Argent Defender. Argent Defender is going to make sure that, bam, you died, you're back up, you're ready to go. Lay on hands, on the other hand, is something that you have to use in the moment. So if you're at 1% health, somebody hits you hard, and you die, you're dead. Where this ability continues for 10 seconds. And it doesn't matter in those 10 seconds whether you die or not, but will trigger if you do. Reboot is another ability. You can interrupt spellcasting. It's a melee range, up close. This is good if you've thrown your shield out and you have targets coming at you, or you just want to interrupt a spellcaster. Some spells are hard cast and cannot be interrupted, such as most boss spells. Let's see, there are a couple other fun abilities to play around with, but for the most part that covers tanking as a whole. My suggestion for your talent setup is to go with either the Pursuit of Justice, which is automatic, you never have to worry about it. For every holy word you have, up to 3, you can run essentially 5% faster. So it's a constant run speed bonus. The one that I have picked, however, is Burst. Gives you a really fast pace, 70% movement speed, only lasts for 8 seconds. Has a almost 1 minute cooldown. This ability is pretty much to get me out of the danger that I'm in, whereas this is constant. Both are fairly well, however I like to be able to be in control of when I use my speed boost, instead of having it just remain passive. Level 30 is Fist of Justice, which I think is the longest stun in the game at 6 seconds. This is a single target. Doesn't work on most bosses. However, if you're getting hit by some kind of trash mob ability, that will prevent some of that damage from going through, because obviously they're stunned and they won't be able to do anything to you. Sacred Shield, which again is what I picked down here on 7, gives you that extra bonus resistance to damage. And this talent tree I can't explain to you because I really don't understand it myself. I don't play Paladin enough. The same for this talent spec down here. Things that you would have to look into. Lastly, level 90. I use Light Hammer because it's cool. Ground AoE. I can actually show you this time around. Again, like Thor's Hammer. This will give you AoE damage. And it's just cool. It's shiny. It's pretty. All these abilities are actually pretty good. I just like the AoE effect. Level 100 talents. Not sure which one there. Not at level 100. Probably will never be at level 100. Don't play a paladin. I play a warrior. So, sorry guys. Apart from that though, I believe that pretty much covers the video. Just one last note, which is the glyphs. I use Glyph of Dazing Shield. Stuns targets for 10 seconds. Then I use Glyph of Consecration, which allows you to target your consecration instead of just being underneath you. I prefer the utility of throwing it wherever I want, since I don't really use it all that often. Your rotation can pretty much run off Judgment, Holy Wrath, Avenging Shield whenever it procs, which is quite often, and Hammer of Righteousness. that concludes my video, and I hope it helps. Yeah, there's not much to say after that. So, alrighty guys, later.